All your life you were taught to fear a God of rules, a God who sits above the clouds keeping score, rewarding obedience, punishing sin, dictating every breath you take. That image has shaped civilizations, written our laws, and even carved the limits of your mind. But what if that image was never the ultimate truth? What if the God you've been told to worship was only a reflection, a shadow of something infinitely greater? Beyond the God of judgment lies the monad, the silent, boundless source behind all creation. It is not a ruler, not a person, but the eternal consciousness from which everything flows. Imagine the difference between a lamp and the sun. A lamp can fill a room with light, but only for a while, only within its walls. The sun, however, pours its radiance across the world, touching oceans, mountains, and the beating hearts of every living thing. That is the difference between the God of rules and the monad. The God of fear is the lamp, bright yet confined. The monad is the sun, endless, eternal, beyond comprehension. It doesn't command. It doesn't punish. It simply is. The living essence breathing through every star, every soul, every heartbeat of existence. Ancient voices tried to show us this truth. Plato spoke of the good, so pure that words collapse under its weight. Plotinus described the one beyond thought, beyond even being itself. Egyptian sages whispered of a hidden light, too radiant for mortal eyes. The mystics of India called it Brahman, the undivided reality behind all illusion. Across every culture, one message echoed: all rivers flow from one spring, and that spring is the monad. But as time passed, the clarity faded. Stories were rewritten, traditions reshaped. Humanity was told to look upward, not inward, to serve a ruler, not unite with the infinite. The radiant source became buried under layers of doctrine, obedience, and fear. And so we worship the lamp, while forgetting the sun. If you feel a stirring inside, it's because this truth challenges everything you've been taught. It asks, who have you really been worshipping all along? Have you been serving a power that thrives on fear, when the true Creator does not demand your devotion, only your awareness? The revelation is both simple and revolutionary. The highest source is not somewhere above you, but within you. And when you glimpse that truth, everything you thought was fixed begins to tremble. Why was this knowledge hidden? Because it threatens power itself. When a soul knows it carries the spark of divinity, it cannot be ruled by fear. Priests lose their control, kings lose their crowns, and empires lose their chains. For the one who walks with the infinite needs no mediator, no master, no permission to live freely, only the courage to remember who they truly are. To preserve their power, rulers and religious institutions began to rewrite the story. They replaced the truth of divine unity with a tale of separation, teaching not that you are one with the source, but that you stand beneath it. They offered humanity a God of laws, of order and punishment, a God who ruled from above and demanded submission. But this was not the monad. It was something lesser, a reflection mistaken for the sun itself. The ancients called him the demiurge, the craftsman of the material world, the architect who shapes but does not create. He is powerful, yes, but not ultimate. Like an artisan working with clay, he did not form. He molds matter into patterns, unaware that the clay itself comes from a deeper, eternal well. Imagine a painter who believes he invented color. His paintings may dazzle the eye, but the hues, the light, the very gift of sight, all these arise from something beyond him. The demiurge is that painter, skilled, commanding, but blind to the source of his own palette. He governs form, yet the laws and the energy that make form possible flow only from the monad. In some ancient teachings, this demiurge was not evil, merely ignorant of his limits. In others, he became prideful, declaring himself the one true God, demanding worship, loyalty, and fear. And there, in that arrogance, the ancient world trembled, because if humanity began to question whether the creator of Scripture was not the supreme one, everything and religion, authority, empire would begin to crumble. What priest could command obedience if his God were revealed as only a fragment? What prophet could demand loyalty if the true source lay beyond his reach? And what empire could justify its rule if divinity was not confined to temples and palaces, but alive within every human heart? To protect their thrones, the truth of the monad had to be forgotten. The demiurge had to be enthroned. This suppression was anything but gentle. Texts that spoke of the higher source were branded as heresy and burned. Teachers who dared to reveal the hidden truth were silenced, exiled, or executed. Whole communities who lived by the wisdom of the monad, the Gnostics, the mystics, the seekers, were hunted down and erased from memory. Over generations, one narrative survived, a single, commanding Creator God, all-powerful, unquestionable, ruling through fear and law. Faith became obedience, fear became devotion, and the quiet flame of inner awakening dimmed. Though it never went out completely, even within this age of suppression, faint echoes of the monad still survived. The Gospel of John begins with 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And the Word was God. The Word and Logos was not the demiurge, but the living vibration of the monad itself, sound shaping reality from within. And when Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he shattered the idea of a distant throne. He pointed instead to the divine spark hidden in every soul, the eternal light of the monad shining quietly within. These were not calls for blind obedience. They were invitations to awaken, and so humanity was left standing between two visions. One, a God outside you, demanding fear, control, and worship. The other, a source within you, inviting remembrance, love, and unity. Most were taught to embrace the first, and to fear the second as dangerous heresy. Which truth feels more alive in your heart? The God who rules from afar, or the radiant source that breathes through your very being? To find the answer, we must return, back to the very beginning, to a garden called Eden. Two figures stand beneath a forbidden tree, Adam and Eve, innocent, unknowing, surrounded by perfection. There God warns them, "Do not eat of its fruit, or you will surely die." But then comes the serpent, whispering a different promise, that if they eat, their eyes will be opened, and they will become like gods. They eat. And everything changes. For centuries, the story has been told as a tale of tragedy, disobedience, punishment, the birth of suffering. Humanity fell, they say, because it defied divine law. But look closer. The serpent promised knowledge, and that is precisely what they received. Their eyes opened. They did not die. So ask yourself, who then was truly telling the truth? Religion has long conditioned you to see the serpent as the great deceiver, the embodiment of evil, the shadow called Satan. But what if that interpretation was carefully crafted to conceal something deeper? To the Gnostics, the serpent was not a villain, but a liberator, the bringer of awareness, the spark that shattered ignorance. In their eyes, humanity was never meant to remain blind, never meant to live as obedient caretakers in a garden of quiet submission. Eating from the tree was not the fall of man. It was the rise of consciousness. It was the moment humanity took its first trembling step toward becoming divine. And what of the God who forbade the fruit? He warned that eating would bring death, yet it brought awakening. He banished Adam and Eve, not because they destroyed themselves, but because they had come dangerously close to becoming like him. "Behold," he says, "the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He fears they might also eat from the tree of life and live forever." Here the mask of benevolence begins to slip. The God of Genesis is revealed not as a protector, but as a jealous ruler guarding his throne. The exile from Eden was not punishment for sin. It was the containment of potential. This reversal, this reimagining, has unsettled thinkers for centuries, yet traces of it survived through time. In John Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan rises as the archetypal rebel, crying out, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." To the church, these words are the height of arrogance. But read them again with awakened eyes, and they sound different. Not defiance for its own sake, but a refusal to kneel before false authority. A declaration of freedom against a God who demands blind obedience. Milton's words, perhaps without his full awareness, echo the ancient Gnostic spirit. Liberation over servitude. Knowledge over ignorance. Of course, the serpent itself is not the monad. It is only a symbol, a messenger within the myth carrying the spark of awakening. The true monad exists beyond all gardens, beyond God and serpent alike, beyond every duality that divides creation. But in the story, the serpent serves as the whisperer of remembrance, the voice that tells humanity, "You are not mere servants. You are divine beings in disguise." Seen through that light, Eden was never a tragedy. It was a beginning, the dawn of awareness, the first awakening of the human soul. Ask yourself now, which voice echoes more deeply within your soul? The one that warns, obey or be destroyed, or the one that whispers, awaken and see that you are divine? One voice binds you in fear. The other opens the door to freedom. When you look again at the so-called fall, its meaning shifts. It is no longer a story of loss, but of rising, the moment humanity first reached toward the monad, even without knowing its name. It was the dawn of remembrance. Now look at the world around you. Doesn't it sometimes feel as if everything is designed to confine you? Systems of control weave through every corner of existence. Governments define your rights. Economies dictate your worth. Religions tell you what you must believe. These are not coincidences. They are the structures of the demiurge, crafted to keep humanity obedient, fearful, and small. To most, this seems natural, the way things must be. But deep inside, you can sense something else, a quiet, unshakable truth whispering that you are far more than what these systems tell you. That whisper is the spark of the monad. The ancient Gnostics taught that while the demiurge built the prison of matter, he could never extinguish the light that gives it life. Every soul carries within it a fragment of the monad, a spark of the true eternal source. That spark is not merely inspiration nor simple intuition. It is the living presence of the One, hidden within human form. When you feel restless in a world that promises everything yet leaves you empty, when you long for truth that no authority can satisfy, that is the monad calling you home. This spark within you is not separate from the source. It is the source, the monad in miniature, the flame of eternity burning inside the fragile lamp of your being. To follow that spark is to begin the great journey of remembrance. It's like chasing a single thread of light through a vast dark labyrinth. Step by step, the more you follow it, the more the path opens. You begin to see that the walls of your prison were never solid. They were made of illusion. And the key to escape? It has always been inside you, but why? Why would the monad place you here, in a world of limitation and struggle? Because consciousness expands through contrast. In the stillness of infinity, the monad is whole. But through you, through the countless journeys of awakening souls, it experiences itself anew. Through joy and sorrow, creation and destruction, it learns what it already is. You are not here as punishment. You are here as expression, as the monad exploring its own boundless nature through your eyes, your thoughts, your life. Every challenge you face, every act of love, every moment of awakening is the infinite reflecting upon itself. So when you turn inward to seek that spark, you are not escaping reality. You are fulfilling its highest purpose. You are remembering the oldest truth, that you are not merely human, not a servant in a cosmic prison, but the monad discovering itself through you. That spark is the truth. And the more you nurture it, the brighter it grows, until one day the walls of illusion finally crumble, and you stand face to face with the one you have always been. And so, as the spark within humanity began to awaken, the world of form reacted with fear. The knowledge of the monad, once spoken freely among the wise, became too dangerous to utter aloud. And when truth could no longer be shouted, it whispered instead, slipping quietly into hidden channels where only the brave dared to listen. Mystics, sages, and seekers refused to let that sacred flame die. Even as the fires of persecution raged around them, they carried the light in secret, encoding it in symbols, weaving it into myths and rituals so that its essence might survive through ages of silence. In ancient Greece, the Eleusinian mysteries spoke of the soul's journey home, its return to the divine source from which it came. In Egypt, the Hermetic masters taught that all is mind, that the material world is but a shimmering reflection of consciousness itself. Centuries later, the Rosicrucians and Freemasons preserved fragments of this same wisdom. Their sacred emblems, a compass and square, a rose upon a cross, the alchemist's furnace turning lead to gold, all whispered the same eternal truth, that mind shapes matter, that transformation begins within, and that awakening is the truest treasure. Yet over time, even these noble orders were not immune to corruption. Some were seduced by power, others by wealth or influence. The outer forms decayed, but within the husk the inner teaching persisted, hidden in allegory spoken only in candlelit rooms, carved into symbols that only the initiated could read. And then, there were those secret circles you have never heard of, Societies with no name, no sigil, no trace in history's records. They moved in utter silence, not from elitism but from survival. For they knew that the demiurge and the powers bound to him would destroy anyone who dared proclaim that thought creates reality. That consciousness is the true architect of existence. Such knowledge does not merely threaten rulers or empires, it threatens the very machinery of control itself. Those who worship only the material tremble at this truth. They cling to their illusions of power, armies, wealth, laws, believing these can cage the infinite, and so they burn the teachers, silence the voices, corrupt the rituals. Because if humanity remembered its true nature, if every person knew they were sparks of the monad, creators, not slaves, then the false empires of the world would collapse overnight. That is why the world appears as it does today, the illusion of separation reigning, while the truth of oneness hides beneath the surface. Yet even the deepest suppression cannot extinguish the spark. The monad placed its light within every soul, ensuring that no matter how many times it is buried, it will rise again. Secret societies may guard the knowledge, but the ultimate guardian is you. The memory lives in your own being, quietly waiting to awaken. And as more souls remember, the power of those who cling to matter will fade, for nothing can stand against the realization of the infinite within. Now you stand before the same choice every soul must one day face. One path keeps you bound to the demiurge, obedience, fear, and a life dictated by forces outside yourself. The other calls you inward, into the spark placed within you since the beginning of time. That spark is not a flicker of hope or imagination. It is the living monad itself, urging you to awaken. This journey is not about bowing to a distant throne in the heavens. It is about remembering that you were never separate from the source. To remember is to return. To awaken is to finally live as you were always meant to live. The path of truth has never been easy. It is a road often walked in silence, shadowed by danger. Those who reveal it have been mocked, silenced, even destroyed. But remember, fear is the chain by which the demiurge keeps humanity asleep. You must not fear the truth. Trust the spark within. It is your compass through the labyrinth of illusion. And when the long struggle ends, those who have guarded and remembered the light will return to the monad. And in that final recognition, you will understand you were never lost. You were always the one walking the long path home to itself.